Hello listeners, welcome to the Atlantic Current. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics newsletter, and as usual and always, with my good friend Vince from Wall Street and Maine. Vincent, it's one of those weeks in, geopolitics where, you throw the baby out with the water with nobody knows what's going on, do we?
No, there's just a lot of news, a lot of confusion. But as the title of this episode is going to suggest, there has been a lot of news proving that you yourself, Tull, have been right about a lot of things over the last couple of weeks. And so many things that we're going to build this entire episode around it. And that is good news for you, Tull. You can take a bow, pat yourself on the back, let it go to your head a little bit if you'd like.
Well, Vincent, I live with 4 women. I'm used to being told I'm wrong all the time, so it's quite a shock to be told I'm right this time, So the problem with being right, of course, is that it comes with the expectation of wisdom, right? I'm not one of the 3 wise men here, Vincent. People start to think you planned on being wise and you were all-knowing, some all-knowing oracle, like in Delphi.
Well, so you are letting it go to your head a little bit.
Yes, you call me the Oracle of West Cork. That's what you can call me, the Oracle of West Cork. I was right about gold. I was right about a lot of things. So yes, call it vindication if you want. But I've learned that being right about world events, Vincent, is like being right about the Irish weather. You still get wet.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because, as regular listeners who are familiar with your outlook on the world will know, you being right about things is good news for you. You can pat yourself on the back, but that's pretty much horrific news for humanity as a whole. I'm not going to lie. I was not rooting for you to be right. No one wanted you to be right. But look, we're going to give credit where credit's due, and we're going to start in energy. And since the start of the war in Iran, begun by the United States and Israel, you have been arguing consistently, vehemently, that the spike in crude oil and natural gas and energy more broadly, it's not going to be a short-term thing. And we're getting more confirmation by the day, even just in how those commodities are trading. We were recording this Thursday evening, West Cork time. Brent crude is spiking back up towards all-time highs. Here in the U.S., we've had CERA Week, CERA, and that is a major energy conference in Houston. CEOs of the biggest energy companies from around the world, government officials from around the world, basically everyone who matters. And the participants there, once again, kind of back to what you've said so far, right?
Yes, because Trump is proving to be quite an unpredictable character as per character. He's simultaneously claiming that he's won the war, he's currently winning the war, but he also needs help to win the war and doesn't need help to win the war.
And the war is over, and will be over. It's over and it will be over in a couple of weeks, probably.
He's still looking to destroy the nuclear program that he claims he destroyed already last year.
Yeah.
Is that a fair sum up of where we are?
I'm not sure what part of that is confusing.
Yes, I know.
That must be an Irish thing. You guys you guys don't understand Americans. I think that's my guess.
Yes, we don't understand American politics at all. I definitely don't. And by the way, the CEO of Total Energies, a French company, which is the 4th most valuable company in that sector, said that if this lasts for more than 3 or 4 months, it's a global crisis, full stop.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, Vincent, and said, this is a crisis already. Okay?
Yeah.
And I've been saying this from the start that things are going to get way worse before they get way better. It's all about vibes, and the vibes are creeping into the markets now at the moment. For a long time, they weren't pricing in the geopolitical risks of what's going on. And a tsunami of bad vibes is spreading east to west now at the moment, as there's rationing going on in other countries. So,
and I mean, at that conference, Total Energy CEO said that, but the 2 of the big American producers, ConocoPhillips and Chevron, who are number 2 and number 3 behind ExxonMobil, they said the same thing. ConocoPhillips owns a chunk of the LNG plant in Qatar that was taken offline. He's talking about significant repercussions, was his quote, just because there's just been so much supply taken off the market. You can't just replace that instantly, obviously. And the CEO of Chevron said exactly what you just said, which is that the effects of the war still weren't priced into futures. If you read any coverage of this conference, everyone in the industry is saying what you're saying now. This is not going to be a short-term thing. This is a crisis. We had another article from Bloomberg with interviews with CEOs, consultants. They ran the math on what you're talking about, the shortages in Asia. They came to a really dark conclusion, and I'm kind of someone who usually says, you got to trust the markets. The idea that you and I are going to look at crude oil futures and think that all these people who trade commodities for a living are wrong and we know better is kind of silly. But in this case, you do have really, really senior participants in the industry saying what you've been saying that trouble is here and trouble is going to be here for a long time.
Yes. In Ireland, it's starting to sound the alarm bells here as well. Taoiseach has been out, Taoiseach Simon Harris has been out saying, no, we need to look at reserving energy and preserving energy and all that kind of stuff. And also, everyone just thinks this is about oil. And it's not, okay? It's about what oil becomes also. Plastics. There's helium extracted from LNG. Sulfuric acid, the single most produced chemical on Earth. I've put that in a few people's drinks over the years. It's how we extract cobalt. Okay, we use oil to extract cobalt from mobile phones or batteries. Helium goes into those NVIDIA chips, I believe.
It's a huge input cost for semiconductors. Christine Lagarde, who is the former head of the International Monetary Fund, she made that point in an interview with The Economist last week. That was one of the risks she thought, from a broader economic standpoint, that people were just badly underestimating. Are we going to wind up interrupting this AI boom because we're going to have massive supply shocks and supply shortages in the chip space?
Yes. And, if the AI bubble goes pop, the rest of the economy is going to go pop with it, along with the oil. We're not just in recession territory, we're heading towards depression territory, may I add. And I hope I'm wrong there, of course. I've read today in the United States, they're putting all their data center building on hold because fiber optics need plastics and there is a shortage of plastics at the moment. And the price of plastics has doubled in the last 4 or 5 days. So this is everywhere. It's not just what we put into our cars. It is everywhere.
Yeah. One of the presenters at CERAWeek was Chris Wright, who is the Secretary of Energy for the Trump administration. And he made the argument that we have discussed before, which is basically that the cure for high prices is high prices in a commodity market. And what he said is, quote, markets do what markets do. Prices went up to send signals to everyone that they can produce more. So please produce more. Again, we've talked about this. This is the Trump belief, to just tell American producers, hey, go to New Mexico on federally leased land, ramp up production, and we'll have cheaper gasoline. And Trump, I think, still believes this. This is why he's doing this stuff with the European countries and opening the strait, right? He's still coming out saying, you guys need to open the strait. It's your problem, not ours, right? And they refuse, which is another thing you were right about. 2 weeks ago, I asked you about Europe's response to Trump asking for help in the strait. Do you remember what your answer was?
Will they something along those lines?
Yeah. It was, your answer was, it was a collective you. And you emphasized collective. I very much enjoyed it. Yeah.
He put out a post on Truth Social and he started banging on about we can't get jet fuel. Why doesn't Europe go get it itself? And he's picking fights with his allies. He's picking fights with the only friends he's left. And I have a theory here that people talk about how this changes the United States and its relationship with Europe. I think it's actually changing the very DNA of the United States with what he's doing. There's been reports all week in the media that American officers based in the UK, based in Europe, are clashing massively with their European colleagues. Spain have banned American military flights from crossing their airspace. So has Italy. Europe is really kind of pushing back against the United States here at the moment. So
it's not a surprise. That was one of the points I made when we did this whole nonsense in Greenland, that Trump and his people and his supporters acted like, oh, it's just a negotiation. And if it doesn't work out, it's fine. Just everyone's going to move on. And this is part of it. If you're a European military officer, you're with some American. I mean, you legitimately have to, at some level, go, well, I can't trust this guy. As you said a few weeks ago, it was reported that Denmark was actively holding military exercises with other countries to prepare for an invasion of Greenland by the U.S. So it's not ridiculous that if that's the side you're on, that you're going to look at an American officer, maybe not as an enemy, but he ain't your buddy anymore, right? He ain't
No.
just this trustworthy, reliable partner. And I guess that's probably a metaphor for the relationships more broadly, right?
It's deteriorating quite quickly.
Yeah.
And the more it deteriorates, the more Trump is lashing out.
Yeah.
Again, I've said this a lot of times, he doesn't have an off-ramp. He said, we're going to give him 3 weeks of hell last night on, TV. I mean, did anybody even watch that?
I'm not sure if it was or not. I mean, I honestly didn't. I knew it was on, and I was kind of checking New York Times website for their live updates to see if I needed to really dig into it or hop over and change the channel. And there was a really fascinating quote on there in the context of the New York Times, which in this kind of coverage tries to be pretty balanced. One of their reporters on the live update site said, quote, "Trump has concluded speaking after 19 minutes. Nothing new was said tonight. This was a rehash of his True Social posts over the past month." Just like that, simple and that blunt. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what my wife is doing. Maybe we'll skip. I don't know if I need to see 19 minutes of verbal True Social posts. I mean, people had expectations. There were rumors. You saw it in market trading. People thought he was going to come out with some news, and that puts it perfectly and succinctly. No, there was no news. Nothing new was said.
I mean, the S&P 500 was down 830 billion bucks when the markets opened today.
Yeah, it has recovered a little bit, but it's heading towards what we call correction territory, which is a 10% drop.
I've noticed there seems to be a pattern here, and he seems to be saying very little or doing very little bombing from a Monday to Friday until the markets close, and then he opens up all over the weekend, and then he stops shooting at them again on the Sunday before the markets open again, and you're kind of like,
I mean, I think he absolutely is trying to manipulate the markets, and I don't necessarily mean that like in a criminal or corrupt way, although we do have an increasing amount of evidence that there might be some people around him who are trying to
make it feel good,
jump into the markets in a corrupt way. But I think that timing makes sense because he keeps trying to calm the markets. We talked last week about that Deutsche Bank index, right? The Trump pressure index. And I joked, yeah, you don't need an index. You just need the line of the S&P 500. I think he's very focused on that. I think he really thinks if that line starts turning south, he's in big trouble. That line, I think to him, is almost a reflection of his political capital. It's a reflection of the patience the American people have to put up with what they're going to have to put up with. And that line is heading in the wrong direction. I think he absolutely is trying to get that line to go in the right direction, in part because I don't think he understands that doing it for one day doesn't really help. I think he's lashing out. I think he's trying all this stuff because he is a little bit boxed in. And I want to kind of circle back to the energy thing and that CERAWeek, because I think there's something really important here that the Trump administration completely misses and that a lot of observers miss, particularly those who are being kind of complacent about all this in terms of energy prices.
Unlike me, Vincent, I haven't been complacent.
No. All the people who are wrong, not Tull, wrong. We're going to kind of start from a high level, which is what Trump's view of oil is. And Trump's view of oil, unsurprisingly, is basically the Fox News version, which is America has plenty of energy reserves, more than enough that we can have plentiful, cheap oil and gas, but we don't drill as much as we should. We don't capitalize on the reserves because we have these ridiculous woke liberals with their global warming nonsense. So Trump's stated policy going back to his first campaign, we're going to increase the speed of permitting. We're going to open up federal lands to drilling. We are going to make it easier for American producers to drill as much as they want, as fast as they want to do that.
Vincent, that famous one, drill, baby, drill. That's been an American mantra since the late 19th century, hasn't it?
In some form, yeah. That's the shorthand for the policy, a more aggressive version of what America has done, I think, for over a century now. And that's a colloquialism that Trump himself has used, his campaign's used, all that. But here's the problem with drill, baby, drill. Around 2003, American energy producers started aggressively using this technique known as hydraulic fracturing. Now it's kind of called fracking.
Fracking, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you basically inject highly pressurized water plus sand plus chemicals into the rock, breaks up the rock underneath the ground, freeze deposits of oil and gas. You combine that with horizontal drilling, which is exactly what it sounds like. And you can access all these reserves that you wouldn't have been able to access in, say, 1995. This is a huge revolution for the industry. It's a big deal. I've been to some of the boom towns that were created by fracking. It's really, really wild to see. But what happens after fracking is what happens to the oil and gas industry all the time. There's a famous bumper sticker. You'll still see it like out in West Texas or in Oklahoma. And it says, "Dear Lord, please give us one more oil boom. We promise we won't piss this one away." Because that's what happens. It booms, everybody spends all their money. Then oil price crashes, everybody goes bankrupt. They swear they're not going to do it. And then the next boom comes and everyone in Oklahoma City's got a helicopter and a Rolex. So fracking creates exactly this dynamic. Prices are huge. In the late 2000s, everybody ramps up their drilling. There's a massive bust across the 2010s. I think the bankruptcies wind up totaling like $400 billion worth of assets. There's thousands of layoffs. Stock prices get crushed, the whole 9 yards. There are already a lot of weak companies by the end of the decade. The pandemic finishes a lot of them off. So for 5 years now, every CEO in energy, in a bid to kind of regain investor confidence and investor trust, they've all said the exact same thing. We are not doing that again. We are not over drilling. We are not making that mistake. We are going to get away from this boom bust cycle. We have learned our lesson. And this is a core problem with drill, baby, drill. I wrote about this right after Trump took office last year. The idea from the Trump administration is that all these drillers would drill more if the government was not in the way. That's not the case. They don't want to drill more. They are not going to over drill into another bust. They have promised all their major investors that they are going to get fired if that happens again.
Okay.
And these guys are making $25 million a year in compensation. They don't want to get fired.
Right.
Can't blame them.
Okay.
So when Wright goes to this conference and he goes, "Hey, look, prices are high. It's telling you to drill more." They're just going, yeah, no thanks. We got windfall profits here. We're going to give them to our shareholders. We'll pay down debt. We'll do whatever we need to do. But there's the other problem with you, which you alluded to before, which a lot of these CEOs pointed out at CERAWeek, which is that they can't even make that decision because they don't know what the is going on.
Yeah.
They don't know what the policies are. They don't know where this is going. So Wright's sitting there going, "Hey, guys, do some drilling." And they're like, "How are we supposed to hire 3,000 new workers, get all this stuff kickstarted and make all these pipeline agreements when in 6 weeks, Trump may have the Ayatollah Jr. at the Oval Office for a visit?" And this is a problem for Trump in America because I think it means our energy prices aren't coming down. It's also a global problem because we talked about Exxon, Conoco, and Chevron, the big three. Yeah. On the whole, about half of their reserves are outside the U.S. So they could be drilling in places like Africa to ease the supply crunch there. They're not going to do it. And Trump has never understood that. And the fact that he doesn't understand that right now, I think has led him into a real cul-de-sac. He is just boxed in right now.
Yeah, Vincent, I mean, drill, baby, drill. I've heard that a lot over the years. I mean, wasn't fracking the cause of a load of earthquakes in Oklahoma or something?
Yeah, it causes earthquakes. There are occasionally reports that people in places like Western Pennsylvania turn on their taps and green fire comes out instead of water. But look, you got to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs.
Right. Or kill people. I mean, drill, baby, drill. It sounds less like an energy strategy and more like what you'd shout in a strip club. I mean,
it's the refrain of some hip hop song playing on the main floor. Not that I know what those places look like, but I can imagine. That probably makes sense.
Where I am in rural Ireland, there's not even a shop, never mind a strip club. But that slogan assumes there's a big red lever somewhere in Houston or Oklahoma, and you can pull it, and hey presto, the oil gushes, the gas flows, and freedom's on the march or something.
Of course, like this. Yeah, just come on. You guys are at the conference. Go back to the office and start drilling. How hard is it? And the other thing too, like if you really just take a step back and think about what Wright's saying, Wright is literally telling them, "Hey guys, go drill, because then we can get prices back down."
Yeah,
if you think about that from like, "Oh, I'm an oil CEO, I'm going to tank the price of my own." Why am I doing this? No, and you can kind of make the math work. But again, this industry is scarred. Its investors are scarred. They are not going to do this. They are not going to change the long-term strategy on a short-term price move. They are just not. They were saying that this week. And the Trump administration and Wright should have known this. I knew this not because I'm an energy expert, but because I listened to what these guys have been saying for 4 or 5 years.
Well, did you know what I like about oil, Vincent?
What's that?
It has a great sense of humour. It's cruel, it's dry, and it's usually aimed at politicians.
That's a good one. I like that. That's
You know,
great.
and what you're saying there, if there's guys in Texas or Oklahoma, right, and they're getting $100 on a barrel of oil without actually having to do anything, whereas before Christmas it was $60, I think they're pretty happy.
They probably would be wise not to say in public that they're happy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure no one was at that conference going, "Hey, everybody, drinks are on me. Our profits are up 200%." But no, yeah, of course they're happy. Their shareholders are happy. The stock prices are going up. Why
Yeah.
again? I mean, yeah. So why are they going to screw this up? Yeah, it's nothing.
You know, when oilmen start talking about discipline as well, you got to be a bit kind of, discipline, really? Oilmen, discipline? It's like bankers talking about discipline. Come on,
Well, I look, they're going to break at some point. This is what happens every time. There's a bust, and they say, yeah, we're going to be disciplined. We're not going to have another bust. And eventually they break. But what we are talking about right now, eventually is not doing shit. It's not helping people who are struggling to pay their energy bills in Ireland or the US or India. Right.
What's the price of what you call a gallon of gas over there at the moment?
We're back up over $4 a gallon, which is big for us.
Massive.
It's notable. And if you remember when we first started doing this podcast, we were joking about Trump lying that gas was below $2 a gallon.
Yeah.
He was just making that up, but it was getting close. And now we're on, I think the national average now is cleared $4.
All right.
And as you said before, that's something people notice in a way that they don't notice other goods.
Whether Trump likes it or not, he's going to be defined by this. And I keep saying that also. But I mean, his whole second term now is all about this. And I see J.D. Vance can't get away from him quick enough. Is he hiding? Is he still alive? Has Trump knocked him off? I mean, there's a lot of people in Trump's circle seem to have slinked into the shadows since this war has kicked off.
Kind of does feel like it's Trump, Rubio, and Hegseth. And other than that, you kind of don't really have that parade of officials that we often have when we're doing this stuff. The reporting around Vance is all that he didn't like this. And there have been some reports that I'm sure you would recognize as pretty obvious leaks from Vance himself, basically saying, I was against this. Look, guys, when I run for president in 2028, just can you put on the record I didn't like this? Because, yeah, this tanking. I sold my soul to be this guy's vice president, and now I'm not even going to get a chance to run in 2028 because this idiot decided to start a war.
He can't put enough distance between himself and Trump now because, I mean, he's damaged goods now for any run after Trump, isn't he, in 2028?
I don't know how he walks that tightrope. You look like you're abandoning Trump to his core supporters, but the people who are anti-Trump, you're still pretty friggin' close, man. Conservatives are anti-Trump. Even by 2028, I think they're going to remember some of the things that J.D. Vance has had to say over the last couple of years.
Yes, forever wars. That'll be whispered in his ear wherever he goes, like George Bush and no more taxes.
Yeah.
So.
And the one thing I will say, I do think Vance believes that position, I do believe, is deeply held. When they had that thing where Hegseth added the Atlantic journalist to the chat over the strikes in Yemen, Vance didn't know that the chat was getting leaked, but he's on that chat going, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think we should be doing that. There is kind of like I was going to say dark irony. You could also say a fun irony to the fact that his one deeply held principle might be the one that ruins his political career. It's not all the craven kissing that he did over culture wars and stuff. It's the thing he actually cared about might tank him.
Yeah, I mean, you say Hegseth, Rubio, and Trump, like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the unholy Trinity, if you like.
I don't think that's a good metaphor, Easter weekend.
I mean, if Satan had an unholy trio, that'd probably be the three of them. Now, we're going to have to talk about Hegseth, Vincent, because Hegseth's broker was buying defense stock before the attack on Iran, or trying to buy defense stock before the attack on Iran. Now, you can dress this up, put some lingerie on it, high heels, the whole shebang. But quite frankly, this looks like your Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, or whatever he's screaming at himself in the mirror these days, is playing fast and loose with American lives.
Yeah, we have all these individual instances where you do kind of say, look, we don't have 100% proof, there could have been coincidence, but the pattern is it's just too much at this point. There's just too many weird things going on with every news development that comes out of this administration. There's too many people making, or in this case, trying to make money. Hegseth would have lost money on the trade if it had gone through, which is pretty funny.
Well, darkly funny. I like, you have your Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense here, looking to invest in defense stock before the attack on Iran. And of course, for the most part, defense stock is going to go up, during a war, because people need missiles, people need bullets and bombs and tanks and whatnot. Sorry, this looks like outright kind of, profiteering on the backs of American service people.
It really does. And one of the things that's going to happen is the Iran war is pretty much destroying any chances the Republicans have to hold the House in November. And as I've said before, I'm not convinced that we're just going to sail through the midterms without pretty scary, significant disruption. But assuming the Democrats get a majority seated in January, this is on the list of stuff that is going to be in a lot of hearings and a lot of investigations and a lot of discussions. So what Hegseth's done, the polymarket trading, the stuff with Kristi Noem and her advertising. There's going to be a mountain of stuff for the Democrats to be going through.
They'll be impeaching people till, to the next century, Vincent. I think Democrats have announced today that they're investigating the allegations that he did make a multi-million-dollar investment in defense stocks right before the war. Now, we have to say he's strongly denied it, but I mean, like, a denial from Hegseth is like, a denial from a small child when she has jam all over her face or something and says she wasn't in the jam jar. Democrats have now launched an investigation. ABC are reporting at the moment. So they're demanding answers to his financial, because it's still not clear, he got blown back from that trade, but it's unclear if he actually made another trade with another ETF or fund or whatever the case was going on there. So that's one to watch for the future. And I'm sure if it gets too hairy for Trump won't be afraid of offloading him.
Well, it increasingly looks like Trump is getting comfortable offloading people. Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General. News came in this afternoon, just after we finished recording most of this episode. As a matter of fact, Tull, that's yet another one you called, another one you were right about. Are you surprised by this, Tull?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, Pam Bondi's probably surprised. She's probably trying to figure out why she got fired after, accomplishing absolutely nothing in the office. She didn't. She didn't go after the targets Trump wanted, and when she tried to defend him against the Epstein charges, she came off really bad in her communication there also. Yep. So, I mean, she embarrassed herself terribly in office in defense of Donald Trump. Yeah. She went down the limb for him. She broke her back on the wheel for Donald Trump, and he fired her anyway.
The one thing I would say in his defense, she did a terrible job. I mean,
she did.
In terms of serving Trump, she didn't go after targets he wanted, which I think you could say as an American, that's probably a good thing, But she did actually try. Part of the reason that she didn't have success going after people like Comey is because judges stepped in over how the prosecutor had been appointed, not over whether Bondi was in the right or wrong. But the thing about the Epstein files, I talked about that in our year-end highlights and lowlights episode. That was like our 5th episode. I said the way she handled the Epstein files was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen a cabinet member do in my lifetime. Yes. 3 months later, I think that's even more true. The only thing I can imagine worse is like a cabinet member showing up to the White House Easter egg roll and publicly kicking a 3-year-old or something. I mean, how she handled that was just staggering in its incompetence. So I agree. I don't really have a ton of sympathy for her in a lot of ways.
She made a famous remark about that. Everybody should be grateful that the Dow was still at 50,000 or something.
Yeah, that was another classic. Yeah.
Do you think
why are you bugging me about Epstein files? The Dow is at 50,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think she's checking that at the moment?
Yeah. Well, where is the Dow? Let's see. It's at 46, so that's why she got fired.
She was a sycophantic Trump appeaser, and she couldn't say Trump's desire for revenge on the Democrats.
Yeah.
Trump's desire for revenge has probably lost her job ultimately, isn't it?
I've got to believe that's a big part of it. That said, the reporting that we had from CNN leading up to this announcement suggested that that was one of the big things he was upset about, along with the idea of the Epstein files. Last year, Trump, I believe, was legitimately confused that the Epstein files was even an issue. I don't think he understood how big that was with his base. So I think that's been just a festering wound. That's something that he thought didn't matter at all, came to define a good chunk of his presidency. And Bondi's a pretty easy scapegoat for that.
Yeah, and I think there was something else going on in the background here also. We touched on this in the podcast about her deep involvement in the Epstein files. And former federal prosecutor has confirmed to CNN that Bondi pulled agents off a counterterrorism unit to scour the Epstein files and redact Donald Trump's name.
Yeah.
And I think this is all about to come to light. And it's going to reflect very poorly on Bondi. And, Trump is going to have questions to ask. So he's preemptively fired her and put all the blame on her. But apparently she begged him not to fire her, apparently. She was on her way back to Florida last night. She's gone.
She is going back to Florida. According to Trump's post on Truth Social announcing her departure, she is transitioning to, quote, a much needed and important new job in the private sector. According to basically everybody in the White House, speaking off the record, no such job exists. Trump basically is telling the American people, as the saying goes here, that the dog went to live in a farm upstate, which is what you tell your 5-year-old when the dog gets put down. Yeah, Bondi is off to her imaginary, cushy new private sector job in Florida.
There's an acting attorney general, but some fellow called Lee Zeldin. He's an administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. He's been tipped to take over from her now.
Yeah, the deputy AG, Todd Blanche, is the acting AG, but the scuttlebutt has been that Trump wants this guy Zeldin, currently the administrator of the EPA, to take Bondi's place longer term. Yeah.
He's the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, which is an agency that's not very busy at the moment because they're too busy gutting environmental regulations, aren't they? So, I mean, he's not up to much, so maybe he might do a better job here.
He can probably do both, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Trump's head of the EPA, they need a different title than administrator. They renamed the Department of Defense, the Department of War. The administrator of the EPA should be renamed to like the destroyer of the EPA or the do-nothinger of the EPA, something like that.
Look, he has a scapegoat now for the next 3 months. I mean, he's probably going to blame her for the war in Iran. He gave her the wrong legal advice or something like that as well, isn't he? I mean, she's a very high-profile scapegoat as well. I mean, how many attorney generals get sacked very publicly like that?
It's not a job that's supposed to have a lot of turnover. It is supposed to be somewhat of a long-term, competent, professional position. But that hasn't been the case here.
Yes, she was neither competent or professional.
No.
I mean, no. And her career in politics is now over, I'd imagine. She'll never run for office. She'll never be given another high-profile job ever again in any administration, I'd imagine, shall she?
I don't know. I mean, I think she could probably be governor of Florida. I mean that seriously.
You think
Florida's Florida's still a Republican state. She's got tons of connections. Once she goes into the primary, it's going to be basically, if Trump wants to endorse her or not, or endorse her opponent.
I mean, he'd hardly back her, would he?
You never know. I mean, he's trying to tell a story that he loves her and she was loyal and all that stuff. And I think he personally probably has some affection for her, given that she's a blonde woman. But
oh, God.
Come on, that was a good one.
Oh, no. You're going to get cancelled for that, Vincent.
I said what I said. We'll see how he acts the next couple of months, how much of he tries to make her a scapegoat or how much of this is just he believes that he can get somebody in there who's going to be more of an attack dog or at least more of an effective attack dog. But yeah, you do wonder if this is a sign that the guardrails inside the White House are starting to bend a little bit. That's what I've said for a while, that they didn't want this chaos. I'm sure Susie Wiles went up to Trump and said, hey, do you really want to do this right now? When the narrative around is that you're losing control of Iran, now you want the narrative to be that you're losing control of your administration too. With that narrative in place and him doing this anyways, you do wonder if politically he's going to start to revert to his worst impulses.
I mean, if Hegseth is found to be playing silly buggers with the stock market while American lives are going into war, Yeah, I think so. If the whole world is burning around me, Vincent, and there was nothing I could do about it, I'd get on that roller coaster and go straight into the flames. But under the blaze of glory. And I think he's 80 years of age. What's he have to lose? I know he's a massive ego, but I think people underestimate his inner anarchist. I really do.
Yeah.
And everything around him has always been anarchy, and people always underestimate that kind of aspect of his character, Inwardly, I think he is an anarchist. I mean, he chafes against the chains of bureaucracy and stuff like that. And I think he finds the White House probably quite suffocating and the bureaucracy around it.
Oh, no doubt. I think he just finds normalcy a little bit suffocating. That's where I agree with you. I think he does like chaos. I think he's more comfortable with it. He's actually even said, things publicly along those lines. Again, the other thing too, and you brought this up before, he loves scapegoats.
Yeah.
He loves them with his enemies. He's constantly talking about how all these problems are the fault of Barack Hussein Obama or Sleepy Joe and all this stuff. He loves those scapegoats. And, when things are going in the wrong direction, I think his impulse is going to be to push as many people overboard as possible. If the floodgates are open, so to speak, Bondi might be the first of a couple of people to get pushed out as he tries to remake this White House, believing that the reason things aren't going well is not because of his strategic inability to understand things like American oil production, but rather just because the people working for him aren't getting the job done.
Look, Vincent, I will say this with my political hat on, that I've never met a politician that doesn't like a good scapegoat, I mean,
that's fair.
And he's very fond of his scapegoats, as you pointed out. And if the guardrails are off, who knows here? Where will he stop?
Pam Bondi's done dumb things. But the reason that things are not happening the way Donald Trump wants them to happen is not because of Pam Bondi. It's because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since you've been right, let's close focusing on something that you wrote about just this week. A really fascinating story taking place. Your version of the story is taking place in Ireland, but the broader story, of course, is global. And this is about prediction markets. And you've been following and writing about what exactly is going on with Irish elections and Polymarket. A ton of money, evidently.
A lot of money, right? Yeah. I'm going to tell you something, right? For years and years and years, people have been telling us there's no money to be made in political betting in Ireland. Okay? I've made a few bob over the years, and it's probably insider trading, and my Paddy Power account once got suspended for betting on politics.
Now, on Paddy Power, which for American listeners is the most popular bookmaker in Ireland, one of Ireland's great business success stories, actually. Been a leader across Europe. From those bookmakers, what's the assortment of bets that you have? Is it just sort of national elections, or will they take money at the local level?
They will take money at what you call special election level, by-election level as well. Okay. And they will take bets at constituency level and stuff like that over the phone, for the most part. But you can bet on formations of governments.
The sports betting platforms here can't offer bets on elections.
Can they not? Right. But they allow you to use prediction markets.
And you guys will do stuff too, like around the Oscars and things like that. In most states, those bets are banned. In most states here, it's sports or nothing. The political and cultural stuff is off limits.
Right. But you can predict them on Polymarket.
Right.
Okay. Now, Polymarket, is that legal in the United States? Or is this state by state level thing?
Prediction markets are regulated at the federal level. And that's been one of the big issues, is that a lot of states don't want prediction markets because most of their volume is sports betting here. And the states don't want that because they can't tax that revenue. So that's a huge, huge part of the legal battle here. But the short answer is, Polymarket essentially is legal, with the caveat that a lot of people believe that a lot of things that platform is doing are not legal.
Okay, because little old Dublin Central, a tiny little sliver of a constituency in the heart of Dublin City, has seen massive volumes traded on it. Okay, so unseen and unheard of in Irish politics. As of today, $763,000 has been traded on various candidates. Wow. I see $73,000 on a fellow called John Stevens, the Fianna Fáil candidate that nobody in parts of his own constituency has ever heard of. The interesting one is Jerry Hutch. Jerry the Monk Hutch, alleged gangland criminal mastermind, all-round bad guy apparently. anytime you talk to the Gardaí or politicians or people in high society, they have nothing but bad things to say about him, and most of it's true, to be perfectly honest. Almost $500,000 has been traded on him, which is a vast sum for, an Irish election. A huge amount of money gambled for an Irish election. There's been a lot of very strange trades on it, People have made incredible trades and made a lot of money that's largely untraceable. And we've never seen this before in Ireland. You're probably a little bit more used to it in the United States, but yesterday afternoon I noticed something which leads me to think that there's a massive amounts of, money laundering going on there. Over $10,000 was traded on a candidate called Mary Fitzpatrick, a Senator Mary Fitzpatrick from Dublin Central. She's ran in Dublin Central 6 times before and has never been elected. But the interesting thing about her is that she's declared herself as not to be running, and her party has picked this guy, John Stevens, instead. And $10,000 are still traded on her.
Wow.
I can't make head or tail of it. I took to X to say, look, this is money laundering. And I had people coming back saying, no, it's not money laundering. I mean, what's the point in, putting $10,000 on her?
Yeah, it does seem... It's
for somebody that's not running, that's not running at all. Yeah. She's not running. She has declared herself very publicly not to be running, and there's still $10,000 bet on her. Over 2 trades, $5,000 each on each trade. It's very strange. I have never ever seen the likes of it before in my life. It's an extraordinary sum of money for an Irish election,
Right.
I'd say if you went back into the last general election, I would go as far as to say it's like €763,000 was spent on betting on the whole election, nationwide. Right. And this little tiny corner of Dublin, $763,000 has been blown through it. Oh.
Yeah, this is one of the big problems with prediction markets, which the model is. I don't know if the Irish media is doing this, but the American media increasingly is using these as data points.
Yes.
Turn on CNN now. They'll have a panel, or when's Trump going to put boots on the ground? And the host will bring up a graphic that shows the poly market or the Kalshi, market for boots on the ground in Iran, as if it's a source of truth. And I've written about this a little bit. I don't really believe that this model can work. And I think part of why is the stuff that you're talking about, whether it's this market, whether it's some of the suspicious trades we've seen around Iran and Venezuela and the U.S., it very quickly creates a perception that if you're just gambling, it tells you pretty quick that you're probably in over your head.
Yeah.
Either it's insider information, either it's wash trading or money laundering or whatever it is. You are just so clearly outgunned. And the point I've made with these a lot is that the only way that they actually work long term is if you get these smaller gamblers to lose money on the platform, because the whole idea is, look, Tull, you have a really good intuition about who's going to win this race, or let's say, maybe you have inside information. You're going to put money in at a price that provides a signal to everyone else of what the odds of the respective candidates are. But you are only going to put that money in if there's dumb money on the other side. And things like this make the dumb money go, and I don't really want to wager my winnings against somebody who clearly either knows something or is doing something that I don't understand.
Yes, I have to admit something, Vincent. I got a VPN and had some fun on Polymarket last weekend.
Okay.
Playing this market, and it doesn't make sense to me. It logically, it does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I put in $20. It's at 60 something bucks at the moment. Okay.
That's a great way. That's a great way to sum up this episode here.
Right. So Tull is, as you said earlier, Tull has been incredibly right.
Tull is on a hot streak, everybody.
So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there and see what happens. Okay. And we'll come back to it for the by-elections when we do our by-election special, or your special election special, as you call them in the United States.
Right. And
see what we're looking at. The amusing thing here is we're going to see politicians up in their soapbox about this manipulating elections, and, it's illegal gambling, and it is illegal gambling because it's illegal in Ireland. I probably should have admitted to a crime on a podcast, but okay.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be too upset if you got arrested. It'd be great publicity.
Yes, Tull getting led away in handcuffs. I mean, there's probably a good few people just show up to make sure that I was arrested, to be perfectly honest.
No publicity is bad publicity. That's what I say.
Yeah, it'd be like Donald Trump. They'd be shouting, lock him up. But politicians seem to be powerless to do anything about it.
Yeah. I got a quick interjection there. You said it's illegal in Ireland. Is it illegal for you to place a bet, or is it only illegal for Polymarket to take the bet? Because believe it or not, in the U.S., it is not illegal to place an illegal bet. It's only illegal to take it. If you're in a pub in the North Bronx and there's a cop there and you walk up to a bookie, an illegal bookmaker, and give him $20 to put on the Knicks to win, he can only arrest the bookmaker, not you.
That is very interesting, Vincent. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask one of my legal friends, if I have any left, what
not
is the
legal
situation
advice,
there?
Everybody, by the way.
No,
just telling you my understanding of American law. I'm pretty sure it's correct, but let's get that friggin' caveat out there before. That's the one thing that brings our podcast down, is me just making some side about illegal gambling. So.
Do you know, I've absolutely no idea. And do you know what? I'm going to do? I'm going to take LinkedIn and put a post up. Just that place is rotten with lawyers and the barristers and solicitors, and like somebody will get me an answer there. But
that's definitely a better place to put the post than X.
Yes, nuts. I hadn't even thought about that. But I mean, the website still comes up, and they still take my money via crypto, of course. Well, there you go. And anything involving crypto can't be good. But okay, folks, if you don't hear from me next week and Vincent has a new co-host, it's because I'm in jail. Okay? So I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
I'm Vince Martin for Wall Street in Maine. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.